While alleged human sex slave trafficker Jeffrey Epstein is now apparently deceased, many questions remain as to the deeper occult implications of what took place inside and under the temple on his infamous Lolita Island in the Bahamas. I recently came across a video featuring information from one of my books, 1666, Redemption Through Sin, and it was presented in the context of current events, and I thought I would share this person's perspective here with you on my channel. His name is Stephen Ben Noon. I don't know him personally, but there should be a link to him in the description. Let's have a listen.
All kinds of accusations are coming out, or conspiracy theories. Today we picked it up on RT when they had published Jeffrey Epstein takes his own life in his prison cell. And I'm sure that's exactly what the authorities are hoping the world will buy for the time being. But it just seemed like only a few months ago, Epstein had become the new main topic, especially in light of newscasts like this one here on Jeffrey Epstein's arrest on sex trafficking charges. We're talking about a multi-millionaire, I don't know, maybe even a billionaire, Jeffrey Epstein there. But he has certainly rubbed shoulders of the likes of Bill Clinton and many others, and now even President Trump tweeting out today, kind of giving more fuel to the fire for the conspiracy theories there. But it just kind of makes you wonder who all was close to Jeffrey Epstein in this pedophile ring that he was heading. And is there something more to it than just pedophilia? Is this a much larger conspiracy? Because we've seen all kinds of things that have come out over the years here, talking about child sex trafficking and amongst the elites and all other kinds of issues that go on. First, I want to play this from back in July when he was first arrested on sex trafficking charges, and then we'll kind of get into this a little deeper.
Man Jeffrey Epstein was arrested in New York Saturday on federal charges related to sex trafficking. The 66-year-old hedge fund manager has long been accused of sexually abusing underage girls. In 2007, he pleaded guilty to 2 prostitution counts in Florida as part of a controversial deal to avoid federal charges. He was sentenced to 13 months in jail. Former Miami U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta handled that deal. Acosta is now Secretary of the U.S. Labor Department. In February, the White House said it was looking into the handling of that case, and a federal judge is weighing whether to invalidate the agreement. Epstein once counted President Trump and former President Clinton among his friends. He has a bond hearing scheduled for Monday in New York.
Did you notice that, though? He considered President Trump and former President Clinton among his friends. You know, I can tell you from experience working with the government there that both Democrat and Republican, there's really no difference. It's just the propaganda that we are fed in the mainstream media that keeps us at bay at believing it, whatever they want you to believe in. Just like we have on Vox News here, the conspiracy theories about the Clintons and Jeffrey Epstein's death explained. The idea that Bill and Hillary Clinton secretly killed their political enemies is circulating in right-wing fever swamps for decades. And of course, no different now. There's those that are saying that the Clintons are the one that did it. Well, I can tell you right now that regardless of whether or not he's really dead or not, whether or not he's been whisked off to some other remote place in the world there where no one will ever see him again, or maybe perhaps he was even murdered. Suicide, I just don't buy it myself. Although they can make it look like he committed suicide, and they might even give him a little help to commit that suicide to make it even look a little bit better. But I think the issue is more of a major cover-up of a movement that started all the way back in the 1600s by Sabbatai Levi, actually is the one that this all began at. And it is something that has been part of a New World Order movement that has moved rapidly in the ranks over the years. And we're going to look at several different things on this here. I want to first take a look at Robert Seffer's 1666 book. And specifically, some things I'm going to speak about in this book here are how this whole idea of redemption by way of sin got started. And when I say that, and I know this might be sounding kind of awkward, like, Steve, what does this redemption by sin have anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein? Well, Jeffrey Epstein, it has a lot to do with him, because the very tenets of what became a movement starting in 1666, going up into the 1700s, all the way into modern days to the Illuminati, the Rothschilds, etc., has been to perpetrate such global sin on such a vast level that this would actually bring about redemption. And some of the names, some of the people in there, the sex orgies, everything else, yeah, it kind of goes along with Jeffrey Epstein. And I think this is one reason why they did not want this to coming out into the spotlight, because this is something that was practiced only in the secret circles there. Actually, I'm going to start here with you here. This is from, figure out which page we are on here. I have, ooh, goodness. Thought I had an idea which page I was on. I'm not sure, but anyway, in just a moment we'll know the page number, but this is from Robert Sepper's book there. If you look on the back here, we also have the Sephiroth tree on the page here that this is on, and well, I'll tell you what, I'll look it up real quick so I can tell you what page we're actually at. This is on page 10 and 11 inside of his book. I didn't want to show the cover because it's a very provocative cover there, but I understand the author is trying to express the evilness of everything that's going on. But on this page 10 right here, they have the Sephiroth tree, and we're going to have to kind of go into this deeply in order for you to really understand what's going on with this. But I'm going to blow this up, hopefully, to where you can see it a little bit better yourself. As we read it, he's talking about, he says, but what are those holy sparks? And that's kind of interesting, the word holy sparks. This is something that, by the way, I think of Rabbi Winston and the music video that was made from one of his commentaries, and he talks about redeeming the sparks. Well, the sparks in Jewish ideology and Kabbalah is believed that, well, let me just read to you and you'll see what it is. But what are these holy sparks and where did they come from? Isaac Luria, which is a Kabbalist, by the way, whose interpretation of Kabbalah is now most widely used and accepted, explained that God created the world by forming 10 vessels. By the way, the 10 vessels are what you see here in the Sephiroth tree. All right, those are like the 10 vessels, right? Which they normally have a serpent running up through that tree, and really a perversion of the Word of God. Really is perverted. But anyway, is forming 10 vessels to hold the divine light. God intended this original light to radiate out, fill the world, and illuminate everything around us. But as God poured the light into the vessels, the divine light was so powerful that the vessels couldn't contain it. With a huge explosion, the vessels shattered and sparks of this divine light became embedded into the world of matter. The material world had trapped these sparks of divine light. God's presence was hidden and unable to shine forth. Then became the task for us, presumably the chosen ones, the author writes, to free these holy sparks. The manner in which people approach and interact with the material universe could set these sparks free and repair the world. Anyway, another key aspect of Isaac Luria's interpretation, now known as the Lurian Kabbalah, is that it required active participation to set the stage for the arrival of the Messiah. He designed his new Kabbalistic instructions for liberating holy sparks to bring about the conditions that would set the stage, initiate, or indirectly expedite the fulfillment of Jewish messianic prophecy. In other words, instead of simply waiting for God to act, the Lurianic perspective expected Jews to play an active role in bringing forth God's kingdom on earth. This new European Kabbalah, unanimously attributed to Luria, was extremely popular at the time and is still most broadly disseminated and used Kabbalistic system taught. I actually had myself a note there, Rabbi Menachem Mendelssohn there, That's pretty much what he was saying to Netanyahu when he asked him, what are you doing to bring forth the Messiah? He says, we're doing all that we can. He says, well, try more. After reading a lot of this book here from Robert Sefer, I actually have a better idea of what Rabbi Menachem Mendelssohn really meant, or Schneerson. Now I know what he was talking about. Bring about more of that perversion, more of that sinful nature amongst the people, especially in Israel. No wonder why we have homosexuality per capita. Something my wife brought to my attention, per capita. More homosexuality than any place in the world. Per capita, more abortions than any place on the planet Earth. Especially after you hear what you're going to hear this evening. Might make more sense, like I said, about Jeffrey Epstein, why they need to cover up what was really going on, because this is part of a global plot. Anyway, the Kabbalah became a mystical synthesis between pagan teachings which preceded the Torah and Gnostic elements of Judaism. Many texts pertaining to Kabbalah, included the Zohar, say that the task is not to destroy evil, but to return it to its source. To put it simply, to include the left within the right in Zoharic metaphor, or to uplift the fallen sparks in the Lurianic one. All right, now that's just the beginning there. Let's take a look at a little bit more here. Now, the process is called tikkun olam, or repairing the world, and it involves all of one's actions, how one treats fellow human beings, works, plays, thinks, and interacts with all aspects of the environment at any given moment in time. Therefore, these heretical Kabbalists believe that acts which benefit God include deliberate forays into the world of sin, wherein the illusionary nature of evil could be more readily exposed and the sparks thereby elevated to their source. Think about these things when you hear people talking about redeeming the sparks and things like that. Really, it's really, I just don't even want to say it. All right, page 16 and page 17. I want to bring some of these things to your attention. Now, as I do this, keep in mind, as we were talking here, Jeffrey Epstein, right? This guy right here, multi-millionaire, billionaire, whatever the case may be there, involved in that, taking on his own life. And of course, I think it's a cover-up to protect all those evil ones out there that are heavily involved in this trafficking of young girls and other sexual perversions and immoralities. And it's no doubt why Israel is so much sin is being permitted. Unreal. Unreal. Let's take a look at this. All right. After Sabbatai's death, Sabbatai Levi, now he's the one that was the self-proclaimed Messiah in 1666 there. But it says in 1676, these sects flourished and continued to indulge in wife-sharing, religious sex orgies, adultery, and incest. The Sabbateans in Salonika and Dolome regularly held celebrations on the 22nd day of the Hebrew month of Adar, known as the Festival of the Lamb. They kept the exact nature of this celebration in carefully guarded secret until some younger members were finally prevailed upon reveal it. According to their account, the festival included intoxication and orgiastic rite called extinguishing of the lights, which ended in total darkness with the religious sexual sharing of daughters and wives. From what we know of this rite, it probably came to Salonika from Izmir, for it's borrowed both its name and its contents from the pagan cult of the Great Mother, which flourished in antiquity and continued to be practiced after the general demise of the cult by a small sect of light extinguishers in Asia Minor under the cover of Islam. They said that the violations of the Torah had become its fulfillment, which they illustrated by example of a grain of wheat that rots in the earth. In other words, just as a grain of wheat must rot in the earth before it can sprout, So the deeds of the believers must become truly rotten before they could germinate the redemption. This metaphor, which appears to have been extremely popular, conveyed the whole sectarian Sabbatean psychology in a nutshell, in a period of transition which the redemption was still in a state of concealment. They really wanted to keep all this very well guarded, what they were doing. Torah in its explicit form must be denied, for only thus could it too become concealed and ultimately renewed. All right. Now, according to Gershon Scholem, he wrote, Sabbateanism is the matrix of every significant movement to have emerged in the 18th and 19th century, from Hasidism to Reform Judaism, to the earliest Masonic circles and revolutionary idealism. The Sabbatean believers felt that they were champions of a new world which was to establish by overthrowing the values of all positive religions. And so what they did is they infiltrated every religion. They infiltrated Christianity. They infiltrated Islam. They became members of it. In fact, Sabbatean Levi actually became an Islamic believer before his death. And the man had thousands upon hundreds of thousands of followers, about 500,000 from what I saw the count that was listed in here. This instance of radicals of the potential holiness of sin alienated and offended the average Jew. So that's good to know. The average Jew didn't care for all this, and caused even the believers themselves to undergo the severest of internal conflicts. Why? They infiltrated all of these groups there, and it really was causing a lot of problems. The nihilistic tendencies of Sabbateanism, still relatively mild compared to what was to follow, and of course that's going to be Frank there when he comes along, reached a new spark in the 18th century with Sabbatai Zevi's infamous successor Jacob Frank, whose followers regularly sought redemption through infamous religious sex orgies or solstices and equinoxes. Solstices and equinoxes. Why is there such a fascination with all these moon things and stars and things like that? Well, maybe that's got a little something to do with it. I don't know. Don't know, guys. Born the son of a Polish Sabbatean in 1726, Frank grew up, that's Jacob Frank, grew up to be a heretical rabbi who claimed to be the reincarnation of both the self-proclaimed Messiah Sabbatai Zevi and the biblical patriarch Jacob, if you can believe that. Jeez, what a mess. What a filthy mess. All right, this here is actually a picture of that guy. All right, there, Jacob Frank. I don't know who did it, but anyway, it goes on to say he created a new religion now referred to as Frankism, which was instigated by the Lurianic cabala and expanded on the redemption through sin philosophy made popular by Zevi. I would stay away from Lurian Kabbalah completely. All right, let me drop down here. It did not take long for the Jewish authorities in Poland to excommunicate Frank and his followers due to his heretical doctrines, which included deification of himself and other controversial concepts such as purification through transgression. The Frankists held annual springtime lamb festivals, which consisted of celebratorial dinner that included drug use, sacrifice, nudity, the exchanging of spouses' daughters for religious sex. What a mess. That was his daughter right there, by the way, who also, Eve Frank, she was called the Lady of the Holy Matron. By the way, when it talks in there about that it was taking these sexual things from antiquity, if you remember, this is exactly what Paul was dealing with, was the doctrine of Diana, where they believed that the only way that the men would be, or the women would be safe in their childbearing was for their husbands to go to participate in these sexual orgies at this cult temple called the Temple of Diana. And this is exactly what was being revived. It was an old cultic ritual that was going on back in the days of Israel. I'm not saying that it was actually in Israel, but as far as what Paul was dealing with in his travels was this doctrine of Diana. And now it is being pretty much practiced, the same ideology of that particular doctrine, redemption by sin. So Frank totally rejected the traditional interpretation of the Torah. He converted to both Islam and Catholicism. Speaking about infiltration of the Catholic Church. And believe me, he's not the only rabbi to do that. That was done long before him. He often slept with his followers as well as his own daughter while preaching a doctrine that the best way to imitate God was to cross every boundary, transgress every taboo, mix, as he claimed God did, the sacred with the profane. At the height of his popularity, approximately 50,000 Jews or ex-Jews, crypto-Jews, considered themselves his disciples. This was far less than Sabbatean Zevi, his messianic predecessor, who had over 20 times as many followers as the prior century. Despite the smaller following, Frank's cult would grow to include some of Europe's royalty, nobility, and richest bankers. That only seems to go without saying, right? So, anyway, we already did this one here. Let me get back over here. Let's find the right place where we got left out. All right, here we go. Now we're looking at page 22 and 23, and then I want to go a little bit into the book by Barry Chamish as well. But let's take this right here. According to Frank, one had to free oneself of all laws, conventions, and religions, to adopt every conceivable attitude and to reject it, and to follow one's leader step by step into the abyss. The annihilation of every religion and positive system of belief was true way he expected his believers to follow. Jacob Frank taught that in order to ascend, one must first descend. In Frank's own words, no man can climb a mountain until he has first ascended to its foot. Therefore we must descend and be cast down to the bottom rung, for only then can we climb to the infinite. This is the mystic principle of Jacob's ladder. He claims this, right? Which I had seen, and which is shaped like a V. Again, I did not come into this world to lift you up, but rather to cast you down to the bottom of the abyss. Further than this, it is impossible to descend, nor can one ascend again by virtue of one's own strength, for only the Lord can raise one up from the depths of the power of his hand. You know, as I read these things, I can see where he gets his ideology, as putrefied as it is. You know, you can see where he gets it. And over here in his book here on page 23, in his classic book, The Eliminate Opiate, Rabbi Marvin S. Ottelman explains where Jacob Frank got his financing. Now that is very important, where he got his financing. And of course, Frankfurt at the time was the headquarters of the Jesuit Adam and Weishaupt, founder of the Illuminati, as well as the Rothschild brothers' financial empire. This is worth repeating. Frankfurt was the birthplace of both the Illuminati and the Rothschild empire. All right, it's very important that we note that there. Now, in 1777, the Illuminati began to cooperate with all the Masonic lodges. Remember what I showed you the other day about this Noahide law thing, being a 21st degree Mason, and that it was Jews that had infiltrated back in the 1700s in the Masonic lodges there in order to bring about this Noahide law system? Well, now we get it in this book as well. He says that especially the Grand Orient, with the purpose of infiltrating them, even the Duke of Brunswick, Grand Master of Germany, said in 1794 that the Illuminati controlled the Masonic lodges. In the time, the Illuminati won control over every Masonic order in the world. All right, Rothschild convinced Weishaupt to accept the Frankist doctrine and afterward financed the Illuminati. So, and I'm sure people like Epstein are part of the Illuminati. And so the Illuminati and the Rothschilds and all these wicked elite Jews there, and this is not all Jews, by the way, friends, so I don't want you people to let's don't put all the Jews in the same bucket, you know. I don't mean it that way, but the thing is, the elitists of these Jews here are the ones that are following a Frankist doctrine of redemption through the most sinful, ungodly, putrefied natures you could ever imagine. Let's see, To fill the Frankist plot of subverting the world's religions and the Zionist objective of instituting a global government which would be ruled by a king from Jerusalem. Wow, that's interesting, right? King from Jerusalem. We're hearing about that a lot today. In Latin, Lucifer literally means light bearer. As its name implied, members of the Illuminati possessed the light of Lucifer. They believed that people who possessed it were truly enlightened and capable of governing. Their avowed purpose and goal was to establish of a novus ordo scholarum, a new world order or a one world government ruled by its capital in Jerusalem. Mayor Rothschild summoned 12 affluent men to Frankfurt and asked them to pull their financial resources. He then presented the 25-point plan that would enable them to gain control of the wealth, natural resources, and manpower of the entire world. This plan included instructions on how to preach liberalism. Get that? All the way back here in the late 1700s. Preach liberalism to assert political power, initiate class warfare, dismantle and reconstruct all existing institutions, and remain invisible until the very moment when the Illuminati had gained such strength that no cunning or force can undermine it. Other highlights of their plan included the use of mob psychology to control the masses. They would systematically advocate and use alcoholic liquors, drugs, moral corruption, and all forms of vice to corrupt the youth. In addition, they planned to use the press for propaganda to control all outlets of public information. While remaining in the shadows, clear of blame, the plan called for the masses to be made to believe that they had been the prey of criminals and that they would restore order and appear as the saviors. Sounds like they're following the plan to the dot in modern days. A key to their success was the infiltration of Freemasonry to take advantage of the Grand Orient lodges. They plotted to use influences to spread their atheistic, materialistic ideology amongst the Goyim, the Gentiles, which were considered the cattle. Through systematic deception, high-sounding phrases, and popular slogans, ultimate world government was the goal. Through corporate monopolies, so that even the largest fortunes of the Goyim will depend on them. There would be all out-of-use economic warfare with a combination of high taxes and unfair competition. Like I said, friends, they're following this right to the letter. Right to the letter. Now, Barry Chamish, I want to share with you some of the things inside of Barry's book right here as well. I'll read some of the stuff we have highlighted in yellow here. All right. Now he's talking about Perfidy Ben Chait's book, The Sacred and the Doom by Jacob Nuremberger. These are Jewish writers that exposed the conspiracy that went on with Hitler and his thugs. So the deal cut worked like this. The German Jews would first be indoctrinated into Bolshevism and labor Zionism camps, and then with British approval transferred to Palestine. And the reason why, let me explain to you guys why I'm reading this right now. I know it's kind of monotonous, but you have to understand this whole thing with Jeffrey Epstein and his death. This is all about the ruling and redeeming the sparks, bringing about a one world order, trying to keep it all secretly covered up, all by the ways of sin and evil and doing everything that is ungodly and unrighteous. And so I'm just giving you little examples of this here. We go back to the quote of Jerry Rabo from page 132, Frankist families. Both those living in Christians and those living as Jews tried to marry only among themselves in the summers. The German groups regularly held secret meetings in the resort of Karlsbad. It is said by the middle of the 19th century, the majority of the lawyers in Prague and Warsaw were from Frankist families. Get that? The majority of lawyers in Prague and Warsaw, Poland that is, Prague, Czech Republic, Warsaw, Poland, were from Frankist families. United States Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurt is reported to have received a copy of Eva Frank's portrait from his mother, a descendant of the Prague Frankist family. Now you're starting to see the picture. Now, let me make sure you guys can really see this. This is really important that we understand this. All right? Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter is reported to have received a copy of Eva Frank's portrait from his mother, a descendant of the Prague Frankist family. All right? Now, so you don't forget now, Frank, he's this guy over here, this perverted guy right here that believes in redemption through sin, right? He believes in having the sex orgies, you know, use of sacrifice, nudity, sacrificing children, killing people, right? Nudity and exchanging of spouses and daughters for religious sex. That's Frank. That's the one with the Frankist ideology. He was the one that took the place of Sabbatai Levi, or Zevi, excuse me, Sabbatai Zevi. All right, now we go back here to this last page, last thing I wanted to share with you here. So all the way up now in modern days, because you'd think, okay, this guy, all right, he was from the 1700s. What does he got to do with anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein committing suicide? Well, hello. It's to show you that evil system moved all the way up through history. And here it is in modern times. And they're trying to keep it under wraps. Here's a quote from Frankfurter. The real rulers in Washington are invisible, and they exercise their power from behind the scenes. Justice Felix Frankfurter, U.S. Supreme Court.